don't you get us started?
Okay, great. Thanks, Daniel. Well, thanks to everybody for being here today. We're really excited about this event, and I am just, personally thrilled to be able to introduce to many of you Ariel. So before we kind of get connected with Ariel, I just want to thank Ellen Renee, our Jewish Community Federation of Richmond president, for being here, along with Jesse Feld, the president and CEO of the Richmond Jewish Foundation, and the foundation's board chair, Jeff Scharf. Thank you for being here. Daniel Staffenberg, of course, our convener and host as the CEO of the Jewish Community Federation of Richmond, and my father-in-law, Mark Sasiski, who is the current president of JDC. I'm thrilled that he's here again. It's a special day for me to be able to kind of help the Richmond community understand what's been happening at JDC over the past few months and years through this challenging time around the world. I have had the great privilege of being able to discuss with Mark and to see him in action and learn about the challenges facing Jewish communities around the world firsthand, mostly through Shabbat dinners. But it's been, I'm excited that we get to bring this kind of conversation and this dialogue about the challenges and opportunities that JDC brings to its work with the global Jewish community to Richmond. I'd also like to welcome any of the Sasiski Fellows who are here with us today. For those of you that are not aware, the Sasiski Fellows is a partnership between JDC and the foundation here in Richmond that takes young Jewish leaders and helps them to grow and learn in their own leadership capacity by engaging with the Entwine program at JDC. And it's been several years, and it's great to have some of them here today or listening to the recording. So I'm going to introduce Ariel, and we'll have some questions from community members that have prepared. And then we'll also be able to take some questions in the chat. So please feel free to contribute your questions as Ariel is speaking or as we're going through some of the other questions. So without further delay, it's my great pleasure to introduce Ariel Zwang. She is the CEO of the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, also known as JDC, a global Jewish humanitarian organization operating in 70 countries worldwide. Ariel is recognized for her work as a leader of Safe Horizon, one of America's leading social service agencies. Her mastery of complex organizational dynamics and multifaceted operations helped to transform the organization, doubling its size and enhancing its financial, operational, programmatic, and strategic health. Her distinguished career in the human and public services sectors includes her tenure as Executive Director of New York Cares, New York City's largest volunteering organization, as a White House Fellow in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as Vice President of the Women's Housing and Economic Development Corporation in the South Bronx, and a Special Assistant to the Chancellor of New York City Board of Education. Ariel began her career with Morgan Stanley in the Boston Consulting Group. Ariel's a noted expert in social support for vulnerable populations and volunteerism advocate. She's a board member of the Human Services Council of New York and the Points of Light Foundation, and was ranked the second most powerful nonprofit leader in New York State on city and state annual power list. A passionate Jewish leader hailing from a family of rabbis and Jewish educators, Ariel has held numerous community leadership positions, underscoring her commitment to Jewish practice, pluralism, and the diversity of Jewish life. She is Vice President of Congregation B'nai Jeshurun in Manhattan and has served in a variety of lay roles at UJA Federation of New York, as a board member of Jewish Coalition for Service and with the New York Committee for Harvard Hillel. She has her MBA from Harvard Business School and a BA in Applied Mathematics from Harvard College. She and her husband, Gordon, are the parents of 2 young adult daughters and reside in Manhattan. So you can see with that introduction, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to hear from her and to hear about her work leading JDC at this time, coming into the organization at a challenging time in the midst of a global pandemic. So Ariel, welcome virtually to Richmond, hopefully in person soon. But, as we kind of get started, I'd just like to thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I know it's been almost a year since you took the helm at JDC. And to get us started, I was wondering if you could share some reflections of your first year, what has inspired you the most and what have some of the challenges been?
Sure, thank you. Well, first, let me say thank you, Claire. And I think I saw Zach on as well, and Mark and Susan, and I today saw Joyce Asiski. So what a wonderful day it is when I'm able to spend I'm in California today, physically in California. I live in New York, coast to coast. From the beginning of the day until the evening. What a joy it is to be together with the Sisiski family and all you do for JDC and the Federation and Jewish life. So let me start by saying that. I also want to say thank you to Daniel Stackenberg, Jeff Scharf, Jesse Feld, Sarah Rosenbaum, Ellen Renee Adam, and all of those who have hosted me here today, and how grateful I am for that. I also have to say personally that I'm traveling, I'm in a hotel room, as you may be able to see, and I couldn't get my computer to work. Oh, now I'm really spotlighted, I think. So I'm on my iPad and I'm a little not looking, I don't know where to look exactly, but I want to assure you, you have my complete attention, and just gonna that's more comfortable for me. You have my complete attention, and if it looks like I'm looking somewhere funny, it's just because I'm trying to
you look great. You're doing perfect.
To deal with the iPad and look at you. So I want to say first of all that the support that the Richmond Federation provides to JDC is crucial. And you asked me, what have I learned or challenges and so forth. But one of the most important things that I've learned, I knew, but still I feel viscerally, which is the crucial role of federations in the life of JDC. JDC, our budget is about $350 million. $50 million of that comes from the federation system. And of that, 30 million is undesignated. And that is just crucially important because it allows us to focus on those things, those great needs, whatever the greatest needs are in a particular year. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone on the call for being so generous to JDC and for your commitment to our work. You have developed a robust partnership with Zaporozhye, with Ukraine. And I think recently folks met with the leadership of Chesed Michael, if I'm not wrong. Yes, I see some nods, so that's great. We define Chesed as loving kindness, but this conversation is highlighted by the fact that it's more than kindness. Loving kindness is action on behalf of those who need it. And the Chesed Center is a hub for relief and socialization for vulnerable elderly Jews and Jews with disabilities. And again, going back to the theme of what have I learned that I might have known, but not in as much detail since coming to JDC. In the Ukraine, 80% of our clients live below the poverty line. They can't afford medicine. They can't afford, in many cases, food or the basics of life without the life-saving funds that you provide. And let me just ask for a quick video, and then we'll keep going. But let's start off with just a quick view of that. Almost. I see Sarah. Yeah, there. Thank you, Sarah.
Самое сложное в одиночестве, что ни с кем поговорить. Только радио и все. Без следствия я попал. Я не вижу ничего. Мне нельзя. Патронажный работник моих глазах. Меня зовут Владимир Осипович Шапилов. Я живу в Украине, в городе Конотоп. Я пенсии вообще не думал, а теперь ничего не могу. Все заплатил. Я никуда не выхожу из дома. 3 года уже. Так еле-еле хожу по дому с палочкой. Топлю печку еле-еле. И хесед мне помогает.
Если бы не помощь Джойнта, таких людей, как Владимир, уже давно бы не было на свете. Владимир живет всего в 5 минутах ходьбы от центра Конотопа, но попадая в его дом, складывается ощущение, что попадаешь в прошлое. Этот человек достойно прожил жизнь. Он всю свою жизнь был полезен стране и обществу и был уверен, что в старости страна позаботится о нем. Но той страны больше нет. Это одиночество.
Дом очень старый, очень холодный, деревянный. В нем дырок очень много. Обложенный дом. Ну, что можно сказать. Мой папа, у него было 2 сестры и мать, и которых расстреляли немцы в 1941 году за землявый пухом будет. Спокойно веков евреи их ущемляли, их полили, расстреливали, а они держат друг за друга, потому что это исторически так сложилось. Мне очень хорошо дело. И я без них бы не существовал.
So I can talk more about our work in the former Soviet Union, but to me, actually, the most heartbreaking image in this video is when Vladimir lets us see it went by quickly, but the snapshot of his family, of his father and his family, because what you see is people who were okay. Father on the phone, obviously, doing some kind of work call or something like that, a family arrayed for a wedding. And then you see the deterioration and the devastation that, 40 years or so have caused. And I find that really the most heartbreaking reality, which is that, and this also relates to what are the challenges that we face, Jewish communities around the world can be okay for a time. And then after that time, they need our help and they're not okay. And so I think, for example, of Venezuela, a country that had a very wealthy Jewish community. And the last statistic I saw, the inflation rate in Venezuela is, you have hyperinflation, 2,900% inflation or something like that. So you have people who lived with dignity, who worked all their lives, as Vladimir did. You see that he worked for, his whole life too. And yet, because of accidents of history that are no fault of their own, these people who we help at JDC, whom you help at JDC, through JDC and in partnership, are faced with intolerable circumstances. Vladimir, who's in the video, is 73 years old, which is his life expectancy 10 years longer than the life expectancy of people around him. And that is the power of the life-giving care that you provide in partnership and through JDC. And the great challenge involved in that is, actually under Mark's leadership, we're working now to figure this out, is what will happen in the years to come. This is a hard group to sustain philanthropic interest for. People were old 30 years ago, and they, some pass and they're replaced by other elders, people who become old. And it's not a problem that you do something spiffy to address and it's over. It's a problem that persists. And I think one of the great difficulties, Claire, also to your question of what some of the challenges are, is dealing not only as we do with problems at JDC that might be finite and that we might be able to address and move on, but also with problems that are not really finite. And what do we do about that? That's a very difficult situation. I will say, though, that we are bringing, 21st century tools, however, to deal with these issues. My parents, I'm fortunate, I'm going to knock wood or knock whatever substance this is. My dad is turning 91. My mother's turning 86. My dad actually is an iPhone user, but my mother is not. And it's funny, I'll just for some comic relief say that since my dad got his iPhone, we got it for his birthday a couple of years ago. My mother complains, he's on that thing all the time. I'm sitting and trying to talk to him and he won't, he's got his nose on the phone. But my mom's not like that. And so if she had to depend on a device to be connected with her community during COVID, she would not be able to do that. So what we did at JDC is, because they have in the former Soviet Union, they have broadband, but no devices, is we provided smartphones to seniors just like Vladimir, who you met, and we also provided them with grandchildren, young volunteers who helped them to learn how to use the phones and the software. And it's been transformative in ways that will persist after COVID, because just for example, I remember when COVID was a year old, it was Purim time, so last March. And people were doing Purim services, reading the Megillah, and it was over Zoom. And seniors who might not have left their house for 5 years because they're too frail to walk down the 5 flights of stairs are now able to attend services. Before COVID, when there weren't online, through their smartphone, they couldn't attend anything. With COVID now, they are able to. And I also, when I was in Israel for a month in June, I attended an exercise class that was given at one of the cheseds. And, it's like this kind of exercise, you could see what I'm doing in the chair, right? For older people in their homes, homebound. And these are services that weren't available at all before COVID and will persist afterwards. So we are bringing a great deal of ingenuity to that. And let me pause there and, not talk super long, see if there are more questions. And I think we may work in another video that we have.
Great, thank you, Ariel. And certainly, those examples of challenges in Ukraine, I know are things that you're facing in multiple locations where JDC works, although each location brings with it its own challenges and its own context. So I think, one of the questions that might be of interest to share is, how does JDC understand and kind of navigate the changing context that works in so many different places where there are Jewish communities around the world, including some areas where the Jewish communities are quite small and the countries that they're in are quite complex, geopolitically and otherwise.
That's the advantage of what we say in terms of boots on the ground. So, if we had some sort of notion of a central monitoring station or something like that, where we're trying to keep tabs on everything around the world, that's really not the right way to think about JDC. We have staff in dozens of countries And they are working integrally with the local Jewish communities there. And it's from them that we know what's happening on the ground, because they're on the ground. They're in touch all the time with the people that are leading those communities or are parts of those communities. And so, sometimes the news is good. For example, or better than one would fear. Someone today just asked me about Belarus. It's a, repressive dictatorship in Belarus. And it would be natural to worry about the Jews in Belarus. And there's certainly, we have to worry about everyone in Belarus. But the fact is, it so happens that Lukashenko, this particular, leader, is no worse to the Jews, no worse. So the Jews aren't, everyone's not well off there, but it's not that there's a particular need that the Jewish community has as a result of that particular geopolitical situation. Again, the contrast would be in Latin America, where, the vaccine is not widely available still, not only in Venezuela, but the economic downturn in Argentina. And the fact that we have such a presence in terms of staff who are from these countries, in these countries, of these countries, we wouldn't be able to have the insight that we have on a regular basis about what emerging situations are there and what we need.
Thank you. And there's a question from Gladys that I'll just quickly turn to here, since it's relevant to what we're talking about. And she's asking about the specifics of working with the Ukrainian government based on the video. But just, I think in general, maybe you could share a little bit about how JDC not only provides human services and protects the Jewish community, but also how they work with local authorities and partner organizations in the countries, and how you kind of navigate that across the diversity of locations as well.
That's a great question, and one that has a complex series of answers and has differed over time for JDC. JDC is non-political, and that sounds easy maybe, but it can also be very hard, because it also means that when there are governments doing things, not only that that anyone at JDC might not agree with, we also know that the long game is that if we criticize those governments or work against them, ultimately that may be worse for the Jews. And so, as hard as it is, we can't be, and I actually stopped myself when I was talking about Belarus, we actually can't be critical of regimes in the way that advocates can. Now, we're members of coalitions like the Conference of Presidents of Major Jewish Organizations and others, where it is their role to advocate with governments and speak out. But it's a tough line, but one that we've shown, again, over 5 generations of work at JDC. JDC is 107 years old, ultimately is in the best interest of the Jewish people. The only exception, well, it's not even an exception, but let me just say, JDC does very important collaborative work with the Israeli government, and we are a very important presence in the state of Israel in partnership with the government. But again, no matter who's in government. So it's not that we're aligned with one ideology or another, one party or another. We work on behalf of the entire state of Israel, helping the people to lead a life in which people with disabilities have more choices and options. The elderly have more choices and options. There's better social mobility for people at the fringes of Israeli society. And, you know, in that case, we do work in partnership with the government. Actually, very exciting news. Sunday, we just signed a 5-year contract that solidifies and formalizes an incredible amount of work on behalf of all Israelis, Jewish, Arab, Bedouin, secular, ultra-Orthodox, all groups that need more from the fabric of Israeli society. JDC partners with the government to provide that.
Great, thank you. That's really, really helpful context. So I'm going to turn now to Lauren Revenson, who is our regional director for BBYO. And I know she has some questions, as well as maybe just sharing a little bit about the impact of our Richmond partnership with Zaporozhye through JDC, supported by the Federation. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Ariel, for being here. I am based here in Richmond, but work with teens from all over. And our teens have really had a meaningful connection through the teens in Zaporozhye, Ukraine, and the partnership that we have had there for the past several years, which initially started through the Federation and sort of moved along the lines through JDC and things like that. And BBYO as a whole has so many connections to federations all over and also to the JDC. And for those who don't know what our, I would say, quote unquote, BBYO is called, there is called AJT, which is Active Jewish Teens. And they have many chapters throughout Europe. And the teens that are getting involved there, a lot of them are just finding out that they are Jewish. And so they're really exploring their Judaism. And I think a lot of our teens can relate to that, especially the ones that I work with from small Southern Jewish communities. So it's been a really wonderful partnership that we have had. We've sent teens to Zaporozhye. We have had teens come visit us. Great friendships that will continue on for many years to come. And when we have our international convention every year, we have hundreds of international teens come in partnership with JDC. So really excited to have you here. But one of my first questions I have is just, can you talk a little bit about why these partnerships and programs are so important to sort of the global Jewish lens and keeping teens and other people connected?
Absolutely. And by the way, I'll say a couple words, but I also want to show a video that we have because I could talk for a million years and never convey what the young people in their own voices can convey. So we'll hear some of that as well. What I want to say though, before you asked, why is it important that our teens connect? I'm the mom of a 24-year-old girl and a 20-year-old girl. My girls grew up going to Jewish day school, going to Jewish camps. Shabbat is sacred in our home. Shabbat is family time. They come from generations of rabbis and Jewish educators. And even my girls, with all that, they need a reason to choose Jewish peoplehood. They can choose anything they want. And how much more so is that true for young people who might not either have grown up in New York City, where you have kind of hot and cold running, whatever you want Jewishly all the time, or, just grew up in a different way. And again, in North America, young Jews, any Jews can literally choose any identity they want. The story is different in the former Soviet Union, where young Jews were denied their heritage for 2 generations. And we know that, and I believe you'll see in this video, people that we work with in the former Soviet Union say, I found out I was Jewish when I was 18, when I was 21, when my grandmother was drawing her last breath and she told me, because under communism for about 2 generations, there was no religion. And so for a different reason, young people in Europe who were perhaps denied their Jewish identity by the Nazis, in the former Soviet Union, where it might have been communism that perpetrated that. Also, people need a reason to choose Jewish peoplehood. They need to have the opportunity to see what that is, what a sense of meaning and engagement and belonging can result from peoplehood. So let's take a look at this video and then we'll keep talking.
Когда моя мама была маленькая, в ее семье не говорилось о том, что они евреи. И я очень рада, что я живу в то время, когда я могу не бояться говорить о том, что я еврейка. Меня зовут Ева Ступка, мне 16 лет, я из города Кишинев, Молдова. Я родилась в обычной семье. Я никогда не знала о том, что я еврейка. И после того, как в 13 лет попала в нашу общину и поехала в лагерь Сарваш, там я начала вообще понимать, что происходит, что такое быть евреем. Я начала понимать, что это мое все. Приезжаю с семинаров полные эмоций, полно знаний, инициативы. Естественно, я сразу к ней прихожу. Так, мама, сейчас я тебе все расскажу, всему научу. Я уже начала спрашивать: мам, расскажи, кто у меня еврей, как произошло, что дедушка, он выжил при войне, и моя прабабушка выжила, но они поменяли фамилию. Боялись, что к тому времени все-таки я хочу, чтобы взрослые люди, которые также работают над улучшением еврейской жизни, знали, что мы здесь есть, что мы хотим менять и меняться к лучшему. Я очень хочу, чтобы наша община действительно становилась только сильнее. Я считаю, что в общине, так же как и молодое, подрастающее поколение должно поддерживать старшее, также и старшее поддерживать подростков. Потому что именно тогда будет чувствоваться вот эта сила и связь между общиной. Если бы я могла сейчас что-то сказать своей прабабушке, я бы, наверное, сказала ей это. Бабушка, не переживай, все будет хорошо. Совсем скоро еврейские общины станут намного сильнее. Евреи со всего мира будут объединены одной идеей. Уже будет такая конференция, как JDC, на которой будет более 400 подростков, которые будут только за то, чтобы менять и действовать ради перемен и жить еврейской жизнью. И это прекрасно.
Thinking about buying a policy, but
Don't need that part. I took a virtual mission to the former Soviet Union with actually a group of Federation executives who were new. They were new enough that they had started during COVID and therefore had not been able to travel with us to the field. And we met on Zoom some young people of this caliber and some young Jewish communal professionals also. And one of the Federation execs asked, well, what is it like? I mean, and we heard this, we just saw this in the video too. A young person goes to maybe some social event or something like that and likes it and goes home and is told, you're Jewish after all. What is it like for this family when after living in a secular way or not Jewishly identified way for 2 generations, suddenly a kid comes home and says, well, I think I'd like to be Jewish now. And this AJT professional, a young adult who works with the active Jewish teens, responded. He said, we see that a lot. We say the first Jew in the family was a teenager. That we think of the transmission of Jewish peoplehood as going from, great-grandparent to grandparent to grandchild to great-grandchild. It's going backwards there. You see, the child is a young person is lighting candles and bringing that home and literally rekindling with the lighting of the candles and other traditions, the memory in their own family of their Jewish heritage.
Amazing. So sorry, my dog is barking. I loved that video. I recognized some staff in there. So on the same line a little bit, how I think some people are concerned that we're sort of losing that younger generation, and how they are going to connect Jewishly in high school, post bar bat mitzvah, and once they get to college. So how does JDC sort of address these issues and ensure that Judaism is still connecting with the next generation?
And you're speaking of here in the US, right? Or yeah. So JDC has the Entwine program, which you guys know very well, and you have the wonderful Entwine Fellows, the Sisiski Fellows. And for JDC, what we've learned is that it is at that juncture that we can make the biggest difference in the lives of young people. The reason is that this is a time when young people are looking for community, looking to reach out, and looking for meaning in their lives too. Maybe more so when they're 50, even more when they're 25 than when they're 15. And they're beginning to settle into lives that allow them a little more stability, and they can begin to have sustained engagement with things that they care about. And so, as you know, Entwine, there are about, can you believe it, 30,000 Entwine alumni worldwide, people who've either been on a trip, done Shabbat in a box, or whatever level of explored their Jewish heritage in their local location on trips, or of course now, engaged online. Entwine is actually one of the most studied and evaluated programs at JDC. And the goal of it is not just to develop new leadership for JDC, but to develop new engagement and leadership for the entire Jewish community. And we instill as part of, it's not just a nice trip and you see Jewish things, there's a whole curriculum and conversation, the point of which is to make young people aware of the broader Jewish world and to start thinking about their own place within that world. So we drew, evaluations pre and post trip, pre and post other interventions, and see just tremendous increases in answers to questions like, I am aware of worldwide Jewry in ways that I wasn't before. Okay, well, that's going to go up. I feel connected to Jews around the world. That goes up. I feel that it's important to provide support to Jews around the world. Also goes up. So it's a very effective program that creates community, creates awareness, and does it at a particular time in life where we feel JDC is most able to make a difference.
I believe I'm throwing it to Jessie next.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Lauren. And thank you, Ariel, for kind of discussing the importance of the next generation, and for Lauren, for all of your work connecting our teens in Richmond with Jewish community in Ukraine and beyond. So now we have a question from our foundation CEO, Jessie. There you are. Go ahead, Jessie.
Hi, I'm here. Thanks, Claire. Like you mentioned, Ariel, we're really lucky to the generosity of the Siski family, Mark and Susan, for starting the I have it written here, so I have it right. The Susan and Mark Siski JDC Global Enrichment Fund, which has paved the way for so many young people in Richmond to take those trips that you were talking about. And without that leadership and generosity, there's many folks in our entire community would look differently. And my question is actually not about the Entwine program. I was fortunate enough to go with Daniel, who's on the call, Ellen Renee, Amy Nissenson, on a trip to Argentina. And when we were there, we heard a little bit about the Jewish community in Venezuela that you mentioned a little bit. And so I was curious on, in general, what Latin America Jewry is like compared to the rest of the world, because I think even though we might not think about our brother and sisters in the former Soviet Union, we've seen those pictures, we've heard those stories, and it was my first foray down to South America in general, and of course into the Jewish community. And so I didn't know what that looks like and how JDC kind of tackles all the different cultural differences. Even though we are one people, we're so spread apart, and there are so many differences despite so much that keeps us together.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, first of all, just some background on, and these are big, broad brushstrokes, but the many Jews who reside in Latin America and South America, their immigrant narrative is very similar to Ashkenazic Jews like me, whose grandparents, came to the United States, in my case, in the 20s or so. Other families went to Argentina. And so, a good amount of those communities are in many ways really very similar to American Jewish communities, except not as affluent, generally speaking. The regimes are repressive in ways that, of course, we did not suffer from here. And now, recent years or decades, what's happening, economically and geopolitically is much more of a hardship as well. So, as I mentioned, some of the things that we face are that these regions have been very hard hit by the pandemic, and vaccination availability and vaccination rates are low because the vaccines are not widely available, and that's devastating. In Argentina, and in other places also, we have begun providing food and medicine in ways that I think the community couldn't have anticipated that they would need even a few years ago. And this is done in partnership with the community. So it's not just that JDC parachutes in and opens a clinic or something like that. There are communal structures, day schools and other structures, and we're able to support members of the community through humanitarian funds that allow the greatest dignity possible for the recipients of those funds. We think that the infrastructure that was established during the last crisis is largely meeting the needs in Buenos Aires, but now we're focused on bringing our work out to the provinces, where we're working with the local communal leaders there to develop standards and systems for care there. In Cuba, the situation, which we consider in Latin, together with Latin America as well, situation is a little bit different, which is that there we've been able, and I wonder if there are people on this call who've been to Cuba together with JDC, because we've had many trips there. The Jewish community there was helped when there are missions and people see what the needs are so close to home. It's resulted in a lot of support, which has been very beneficial and necessary. When missions don't go there, it's harder to attract that support. And so that's been a challenge and difficult. In Cuba, though, they have devices. So they have smartphones, but they don't have broadband. So just as an example, we've helped the Jewish community there. It's an example of using what you have. So we help them develop ways of, for example, having Shabbat services over WhatsApp. Very, very moving to see, you see the leader putting in WhatsApp, now everyone please turn to page 68. Jacob, please upload your video. And it has Jacob uploading his video singing Shema Yisrael. And then, the video continues. Now we'll be on page 103. And we have, the next participant is please upload your, not video, audio. I said video, I meant audio. It's all WhatsApp and by audio of the next participant lighting candles, for example, saying the blessing over the candles. So working with each community based on the strengths that they have, given the knowledge that we have, because our staff are so global, to help them meet their needs.
Great, thank you, Ariel. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel.
Thank you, Ariel. Thank you to everybody for participating. It looks like there's a ton of energy in the room and some good questions. And hopefully you'll stay with us for a little longer than 6 o'clock. Ariel, you said something really powerful that I'm going to challenge you on, and we just met, so maybe that's not the first way to say, but you said that it was backwards now how we were teaching Judaism in the former Soviet Union, that now the children are going backwards and teaching their grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Great-grandparents.
Right, exactly. Sorry, great-grandparents, I messed it up. I actually think that may be our way forward, because I think there is such great strength in how I'm seeing a ton of our young people get engaged. I know BBYO, we have a local NCSY group that is growing here, and we are inundated with lots of people wanting to do Jewish, maybe in some new and different ways. And the Federation is excited to kind of explore that area, put more resources and investment in that. And one of the benefits we've done is bring on the talent that JDC has lent us in one of our Sisiski fellows onto our team, Rachel Peters, who I wanted to introduce, and ask her to ask one of our final questions. Rachel's leading our community engagement and really thinking outside the box about how we let people explore their own Jewish identity, their leadership, and I know is connected beautifully. Rachel, why don't you take it over?
Thank you, Daniel. That was such a nice introduction. So I feel like Lauren has really touched on some of the questions that I really was thinking about asking. So I'm going to truly maybe pivot here for that. But as a 2019 Sisiski Fellow, which I was very, very fortunate to be a part of, I was previously an educator while I was able to receive that gift from the community and the Sisiskis. But while I was on the ground in Ukraine, I witnessed an intentional focus on communal Jewish spaces with an emphasis on pluralistic values. On the ground, they are dedicated to community outreach and intentional programming, which has sparked a purposeful and purposeful rebirth of engaged and dedicated community members. AJT was something that I've never seen before. It really, truly helped me cultivate where I was maybe navigating my career, seeing this full circle of communal life, how people that are invested in that have anchors and on-ramps in Jewish life, how they're able to sustain their whole life cycle with a purpose, with leadership. Truly, these children and teens said that this impacted me, so I give back. I am now a leader because I was impacted by a former counselor, and I feel like my experience was just that. I could ask how and what are your suggestions for us as we rebuild in North America, because I do believe that just as we heard that JDC's role is to revitalize communities around the world, I think us in smaller communities are needing to really hone in on that as well. But we did touch on that with Lauren and with Entwine and other opportunities for Jewish life. So I guess now, after Jesse's question and answer, I'm wondering how can JDC communicate, or how does JDC communicate the needs globally to each community? I'm really wondering, are there ways that we can create programs to promote and foster that understanding and develop a community in terms of our peoplehood while we're all revitalizing in a way?
Great question. This is where it's so important to note the incredibly precious relationship between JDC and the federations. Because for most of the life of JDC, there was almost no difference between JDC and the federations. What I mean by that, of course, is that the federations were the vehicle by which Jews in absolutely every corner of North America it was the tangible way that they demonstrated their engagement and responsibility to Jewish communal life by participating in the federated giving of their community. And when the federations raised money and said, the reason you should support this federation is because of all the needs locally and around the world that your one gift can accomplish. And what they meant is, because some of these funds will go to JDC and to Jewish Agency also, our overseas partners. Over decades, the whole paradigm of federated giving is evolving. But that means,
both.
yeah, it's even more important to have conversations exactly like this one, so that those who lead the federations and are their biggest donors and are inspiring others to donate and learn more and feel part of the Jewish people know what it means that when you are raising these funds and supporting Jewish life around the world, this is how it is. And in turn, that knowing what the problems are around the world hopefully will inspire, people's continued engagement in Jewish communal life. And again, tangible engagement through their generosity. So all I can say is I look forward to a lot more opportunities and conversation. If there are different groups, larger groups, groups that aren't as deeply involved as the groups on this call, we welcome the opportunity to talk more about what JDC does, because that's only a win-win for the Jewish people, for the federations, and for our supporting JDC. So anytime, anywhere.
Great. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Rachel. So now it is just in closing, I'm going to turn it to my father-in-law, Mark Sasiski, who is, as many of you know, both a personal mentor to me, but also I'm just grateful to him for sharing his work with JDC, his work with and commitment to both our federation and our foundation here in Richmond, with me and my husband Zach, but also with our children. I really feel that his work and his connection through JDC to global Jewish communities is providing my kids their reason to choose Jewish peoplehood. So, thank you to Mark and Susan, and I will turn it to you, Mark, for a close.
Mark, you need to unmute, my friend.
I thought you were in control. So thank you. Susan's here, and my life partner, and we've done a lot of this together. I do want to say thank you, Ariel. In many ways, Ariel is the new face, not only of JDC, but of the Jewish leaders in America, professional leaders in America for the next couple of decades. And I think we're heading in the right direction. There are no shortage of people that want to be the head of the Joint Distribution Committee, want to be the head of the CEO, but Ariel rose above them all. And we do talk all the time, and she calls me boss, and I like that. So that's nice. So thank you, Ariel, for being our guest in Richmond tonight. I do want to also add, I want to thank the Federation professionals that are here tonight, and also Daniel, you especially, and the Richmond Jewish Foundation, Jesse Feld, for his dedication to Jewish professionalism. Let me just end this by saying that I don't think we can convey the broad footprint adequately of JDC. It is huge. This organization, we focused a lot about Latin America and the Soviet Union, and really didn't spend that much time on Israel, but there is an incredible we have about, about 500 people working in Israel, and we're there as your representative. I want you to know, we represent the Jewish people, we represent the Jewish people of America, and their wishes to make Israel a better country, to take care of Jews in need anywhere in the world. And it's been the way we've been since 1917. I mean, for 107 years. So it's amazing. It's truly an amazing organization. I think we touched on some of the terrible poverty that only Eastern European poverty can present itself. And we've seen also the future of inactive Jewish teens, and in many of our other programs for young adults, families, Shabbatons, summer camps, you name it. And we're all through Europe, we're all through the former Soviet Union. Moldova is the poorest country in Europe, and you saw what we were doing in Moldova. So we're working very hard daily and touching the lives of about 55,000 people a day. So when you put it in those terms, you get the measure of our broad footprint. And yes, we have a division that many American Jews support of the work we do in international development and identifying ourselves as Jews and helping people that are not Jews. But through our work in Africa and other places in the world, we make friends for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel, and there's just no right way to do the wrong thing. We do the right thing, and we bring a lot of joy and a lot of love to wherever we go. So I don't think anybody can ever forget the loneliness and the happiness that they can both feel at JDC on any trip. And I kind of feel that, it's difficult for your heart to feel what your eyes don't see. So what I would do is invite all of you here today that are listening to take a trip with us sometime. Adventure travel is going to be popular again. We want you to come with us and see the way the world is, not the way the world you think it is, but the way the world is. And there's no way to do that other than to go. So again, thank you to everyone that I thanked earlier. This is my hometown. I love Richmond, and I understand we have our own issues here. I understand it as well as anyone. But I want you to know we have an obligation to those that we cannot see, we often cannot hear, and we often cannot hold their hand. So just to let you know, it's a great honor and a privilege to be the president of JDC, and I don't ever take that for granted. So thank you. Daniel, I think I'm supposed to turn the program over to you.
Yeah, always my favorite spot. Speak after Ariel, after Claire, after Mark, and not mess up a wonderful evening. Mark, first of all, on behalf of your Richmond family, we are grateful that you are representing Richmond on a global scale. I love it when you get to share some of your adventures with us, and we are all following you and are grateful for you. Thank you for everything. A couple also thanks, first and foremost, to Claire Sisiski, who was not afraid to pick up the phone and say, yeah, I could get on board with this, and really made this happen. So Claire, thank you so much. To our partners over at the Richmond Jewish Foundation, Jesse Feld, Jeff Scharf. It has been wonderful to have Jesse join us as the leader of that organization and really create stronger partnership. To my own team, Sarah, David, Rachel, and our lay partners, Ellen Renee Adams and Amy Nissenson. Thank you all. This community has always clearly punched well above its supposed weight. Everywhere I go, people know about Richmond. We are represented, as you can see, by Mark, Claire, and others on national scales, and we are only going to keep striving for that, and it's you guys who drive us forward, so I'm grateful for that. And last, and she's an unsung hero for us, I know JDC is continuing its work tomorrow with our Community Leadership Initiative group. Sandy Katz, who is our amazing partner at JDC, always finds a way to say yes, and we're about to ask her for some new stuff because it looks like, from what I understand in the chat, Sandy, we're planning a trip to Cuba, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Eastern Europe, Zaporozhye, and we have to get it done in, it looks like, about 3 months. So we'll be in touch, and we are grateful. Mark, is that you putting up a hand to say something?
Well, no, I meant to give a shout out also to Sandy, who's a terrific professional with JDC. Thank you, Sandy. And also, I forgot to thank Claire and Zach for putting all this together and working on it. They're terrific, terrific adults that happen to be my children.
The apple pie didn't fall from the tree. In closing, I'll just say thank you to the close to 70, 80 people who joined us here today. There were a bunch of moments, and whenever I get the opportunity to travel with JDC, the stories abound. And it's never easy to figure out just one or two to share. But as I was looking at the videos, the young woman who was part of the Active Jewish Teens said, "That's when I feel the strength of my community, is when I'm there." And these are moments, we've been tested for the past 20 months, but I actually think that was the start of the marathon. The next 20 months and the next years beyond is where we are going to need to rely on each other's strength. We're going to need to push each other to be better, not just for our local communities, but for our global Jewish life. And as we are doing here in Richmond, led by our Israel and Overseas Department, we're actually meeting JFS Richmond and our Chesed centers in the former Soviet Union, not to share one way, but to share both ways and learn from each other. And there is great strength in this community, and I'm grateful for each of you. Behind is it my left shoulder or my right shoulder? I don't know if I've mirrored my video. There is a black and white photo that shows individuals in 1919 distributing dollars that were allocated by them and to them in Eastern Europe to support Jews in need. In 1919, as Ariel shared with you, those dollars came from people sitting in our seats at that time. While I am 100% encouraging you to continue and grow your support of JDC and get involved, I do ask you to also join the Federation in continuing our hundreds of thousands of dollars of support annually for JDC. We're in the middle of the annual campaign. It matters, and we need you. And that is when we can share the strength of our global community. Thank you all for being with us tonight. As has become a little bit of tradition, I'm going to open up the room. We'll have everybody be able to unmute, share a little words. Ariel, it can get a little crazy. Richmonders give that Southern hospitality, but you're welcome to stay on as much as you'd like. Thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.